Hey gang, welcome to the Gila Athletics Connections podcast. Our goal here is to simply share with you the stories and backgrounds of the great people of this great sport, track and field. I am your host, Mike Cunningham. It is my honor and privilege to bring you these great men and women from around the world. This week, oh man, I just had such a blast. I've got Ernie Clark of Ashland University to talk with today. Really interesting. We really focused on his 14 years of coaching high school track and field, and then his transition now for 5 years as the assistant coach, associate head coach at Ashland University. I think you're really going to enjoy his insight to high school coaching and teaching and how that translated into Ashland, things that were immediately easy, that transition, and the hard parts of that transition. So just had a wonderful time. I just absolutely know you're going to enjoy this, and this will be real pertinent for you as a track and field fan and coach of this great sport. So without further ado, please help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Ernie Clark. Hello, Ernie.
Hello, Mike.
Hey, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing really well with everything that's going on, man.
I should always caveat that right now. Are you doing okay in the world that we live in today?
Yeah, we're all healthy. We're all hanging out at home and doing family stuff, baby stuff, and whatever.
How weird does it feel? It's we're recording right now in the afternoon. You're supposed to be on the track right now.
Yeah, it's for me, it's by far the biggest struggle. Is I just really, I think all good coaches say this, but I miss serving my kids and my athletes and being able to just work with them and for them on a daily basis.
Yeah, I could see that. And I know you do this, but that is a great segue for something that I'm extremely personally passionate about is track and field coaches specifically. Take away the word coach, and you are a person, you are a husband, a wife, a father, a daughter, a son.
Yeah.
Let that same attitude that you have right there be what you're doing now with wife and kids. And like you said, you got two little babies. This is the perfect time for you to be home. I know wife is enjoying this.
Yeah, she really does absolutely love it. It's funny that you lose your life's routines, but my wife has created all these routines with our babies. So she just fits me in. Okay, you're gonna do this and you're gonna do that, and that's not a complaint either. Just like okay, and you just roll. And it's actually been, that piece has been pretty amazing. And we joke every night about how much we're actually enjoying just our family time and each other, and we hope other people are too.
Absolutely.
Because not everybody enjoys each other as much as we do.
Yeah, well, they're going to find out real quick.
Yeah, they will, won't they?
Well, man, I can't say thank you enough for joining us today on the Gila Athletics Connections podcast. This is going to be a lot of fun. Ernie and I, actually, we met once. I doubt you remember this, Ernie. It was at the convention this past past December. You were walking by, and I said something about, so you're an Eagle, huh? And we, of course, talked about someone that we know very well and respect highly, Mr. Judd Logan. But then we've never talked since then. So,
Mike, that's hilarious because I spoke at the convention.
Right. Yeah.
But that's probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life. So I don't hardly remember meeting or talking to anybody because I was so locked in on trying to do a good job with that presentation. So that's funny. You're right. I do not remember that, but I appreciate you saying something to me.
You were nervous and anxious and excited, and I'm a pretty easily guy to forget. So I get it, man. I get it. Well, hey, we talked a little bit before we started recording today, and you have an extremely interesting, fascinating career path to where you are today at Ashland University as the sprints and hurdles and associate head coach, I think, as well, is in your title there. One of the things that is extremely interesting that I'd like to explore today for our listeners is you were a high school track and field coach for the majority of your career so far. And then got the opportunity to work at a really good Division II program.
Yeah.
So walk me through. Let's start with your high school coaching career and where you were, and how did you even get into coaching?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and anyone that doesn't know me would never assume this, but anybody that knows me from when I was a really young child, you would be totally surprised that I would become a coach, especially a college coach, simply because no one in my family was an athlete.
Oh, is
Not
that
my
right?
cousins, not my uncles, not my aunts, not my brother, not my sister. My brother followed my footsteps a bit to into athletics, but no one in my family really ever did anything along the sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So as I got into it, I think it's always important to say that it was always kind of a privilege. My dad never said, he wasn't taking videos and watching practice and high-fiving. He was like, if you're going to do that, you better get this, and this done, chores and
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities and work enough to pay for your team shoes and that type of thing.
Mm.
So it was very much a privilege for me to do high school sports and to try to work really hard to make, the starting lineup or to earn a varsity letter.
You were, I know track, obviously.
Yep.
Did you do other sports in high school as well?
My first love in life was basketball.
Oh, well, you grew up in Indiana. So
in Indiana, yeah.
I think that's law or something. You have to, Hoosiers.
You got to put a hoop up.
Right.
someplace, even if it's in gravel or like my dad did. He put one about, I swear to God, it was 15 feet up on the side of our garage. He found a hoop at like an auction or something. It had no net. And you could tell someone had taped a net on it 100 times over. But I still remember giving everything I had to try to get the ball high enough to actually touch the rim.
10
way
feet,
back in the day.
10 feet's high enough. 15.
Yeah, and I can promise you it was beyond 10 feet. But yeah, so basketball was big. That's really what I wanted to do. And I did play I ended up playing from like fifth, sixth grade all the way through my senior year of high school. I did track from 8th grade through 12th grade and then on into college. And I did cross country 2 years of high school because my track coach talked me into it.
Oh, man.
So I became a 3-sport athlete by the end, which was a big deal because my family was not necessarily for that, specifically my dad, but he really came around and became a really supportive person by the end as he saw what it was doing for me.
Saw your dedication to it. This wasn't just another, when kids, we have all these ideas and they fall by the wayside, but you were sticking to it and having success.
Well, I think initially he thought it was a waste of time. And then when he'd see me coming home frustrated, maybe that I didn't get playing time, or, I fall in a hurdle practice or I fall in a track meet over a hurdle and I'm angry and I'm frustrated. I know that he thought, what's the point? Like, why do you put all this effort and time into something and then just get angry? Just don't do it.
All right.
And it was easy for him to say that because he didn't grow up doing those things. He was more concerned about, he grew up on a farm with 5 brothers.
Wow.
They all worked on the farm. They did what needed to be done to help the family at home. And that's kind of how he grew up. And that's how he raised us too. He took care of our family in any way, shape, or form, however many jobs he had to work, however many hours he had to work. It wasn't about playing a game.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I get it.
Yeah. So you, obviously athletics was a big part of your life growing up through high school. As you were getting ready to transition to college to run track there, was coaching in your mindset at this point, or was this still just an activity?
So at the same time, very few people in my family finished high school, let alone went to college and earned a degree. So it really wasn't much in my head until I became a regional state qualifier in the 300 hurdles as a sophomore. And then going into my junior year, I started kind of thinking about it. Maybe I'm good enough to go to college and actually run track, or maybe even play basketball at a small school. That would be pretty awesome. So I just worked and I worked, and I also had a phenomenal art teacher, a guy by the name of John Thomas, who I still speak to. And he started to say, man, you're incredible. He really changed my life in the academic standpoint because of being an art teacher. He said, man, you got to realize at some point, some people are really gifted in reading or comprehension or math or memorizing history or whatever. But he said, you're like a Renaissance man. You have this intelligence where you can do things. You're extremely athletic and you can paint, you can draw, you can sculpt. And it was a moment where I realized it was okay to not be a straight A kid in chemistry and in math and all that stuff. But I had this other thing that was my strength. And he made me feel, for the first time in my life, by the way, like I was intelligent. So with that conversation, I started to think about being a teacher and a collegiate athlete. And at the same time, I thought to myself, and he said this, by the way, wouldn't it be cool, man, to be a teacher, to coach, and have the summers off? and that was kind of the moment where I decided I really did want to, teach high school and try to be a coach.
You're like, that is a good idea.
That's a great idea, man.
So you went to the University of Indianapolis, correct?
Yeah.
Great Greyhounds, Racehounds?
Yep, that's right. The Greyhounds.
Did you study art there?
I ended up going on like three or four different art scholarships.
Wow.
I was pretty gifted as a young kid, but I was able to really do a lot of things by the time I was a senior in high school. So I got 3 or 4 art scholarships. I got $1,000 scholarship for track. That was it.
Right.
It was Scott Fangman's first year. So anybody that knows UIndy, he's been there for a while now.
Yeah.
But I was his first recruit ever.
Huh.
And because of that, it was all new for him too. He was a high school coach at a place called Southport near Indianapolis, and had a lot of success there. But he made a home trip. He came all the way to my house. That was a big deal out in little North Liberty, Indiana. And I had it narrowed to 2 schools, and I looked up his kind of coaching history and found out that he coached some really good hurdlers in high school. So once I knew I could do it cost-wise, working summer jobs and doing whatever I needed to do, and with the art and the track scholarship, I said, I'm doing this. And I did. I went to the University of Indianapolis and pursued an art education degree.
Wow. That's interesting. I don't know. I can't think of another coach who has an art degree.
There's very few of them, man. There's not very many.
Wow. So you go there and you race. You're a 400 hurdler primarily, and you have a lot of success there. When you graduate, do you go straight into coaching or teaching and coaching high school?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting about going to UIndy is I didn't even know if I was good enough in a way.
Okay.
I had only broken 39 seconds in the 300 hurdles one time. I ran 38.90 my junior year. So it's always funny to me looking back. I used to run some crazy workouts on my own so that if I couldn't be a good enough 400 hurdler at the collegiate level, that maybe I could do the steeplechase.
Oh, wow.
So I would like force myself to do repeat miles and progressive repeat miles where I would run a comfortable mile, then take some rest and run a hard mile and then take one more break and try to beat that. I was doing crazy stuff. But anyway.
For sure, you're the only 300 hurdler who also, as his backup plan was, maybe I could be a steeplechaser. No way that's anybody else.
I had so much desire to be successful in college that I was willing to do whatever it took to be on the track and be a factor for the team. And I made that decision before I ever got on campus. So yeah, that did lead me to there. But
Wait, so hold on now. Let's
go ahead.
Did you ever run the steeplechase in college?
No.
Okay.
It went really well there. I actually was the freshman of the year in the GLVC. Kind of by default, though, is the bad news.
Well, how by default? There was other freshmen.
Well, because I ended up running the 110 hurdles, the 4x1 relay, the 4x4, and the 400 hurdles. But literally prior, like, probably a couple days before entries were due, I was not on the 4x1. I was probably on the verge of not making the 4x4. And my coach had decided to take me out of the high hurdles, because it was going so poorly. I really struggled with the increase in height. And it's because in high school I was such a bad technician, and everybody knows this, the coaches hurdle. So I'm sure, if you're a really bad technician, raising 3 inches is like raising the hurdle a freaking foot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had a couple races where I lost the 3-step, where I was crashing hurdles. So anyway, I wasn't even supposed to do it. Well, one of the things I take a lot of pride in is I was able to flip the switch a lot of times in big moments. And I mean, I lifetime PR'd in the highs. I ran a really, really good 400 hurdle race. I ran huge legs on both relays, and they did well. And the next thing you know, I was freshman of the year.
Awesome. That's cool. Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah. So anyway, by default, I ran, I guess my point is, in 4 events. And then I did step up well enough to earn the award.
Right. Good. Yeah. There's no default in awards. There's too much talent for any defaults anymore. That's for sure. So, well, let's walk through your high school coaching career, because again, we want to figure out, how did you transition from high school to college coaching? Why you made that decision? I mean, you coached high school track for quite a while.
Yeah, 14 years.
Yeah.
Just to finish up that little college thing, I ended up. There's probably 2 things I want to say to kind of end this off that transitions me to my coaching career. My junior year, I ran 52.5 in the 400 hurdles.
Wow.
Which, it's gotten a lot stronger since, but at the time, that was the 8th fastest time in the country in D2.
Wow.
I go to the national meet, and I crash hurdle 7.
Oh, of course, 7. Yeah.
So hurdle 7 on the curve, I crash it hard. I feel my head snap onto the track, and I look up and I just see clouds, and I'm like, oh my God. I can't believe this. I just can't believe it, man. All the work I've put in. So, but in my head, I literally go, it just wasn't my time. I've got next year. So, fast forward to the next year, I get really, really sick. I get hospitalized. I lose like 35 pounds. I lose muscle mass, lose strength. I'm just skin and bones. This is during the first week of school, by the way, my senior year.
Oh, wow.
So scrape myself, up. I ended up with a extremely rare infection in my esophagus that did not allow me to swallow, not even water. I couldn't swallow anything. So, I do the best that I can getting back, and I end up missing the national meet by 0.02. So 200ths of a second. First guy out, it's just over. Now, the reason I say those 2 things is because that took me into high school coaching, and from the get-go, man, I was pretty intense. Meaning, I came from being a person that I wasn't even sure if I was good enough to run in college to being a national qualifier. I've worked really hard to do that. Number 2, I knew what it felt like to miss a goal by a hair. And I didn't want anybody that I coached to ever have to go through that feeling.
Right.
So I was a pretty intense guy. It led me.
Tell me what that means. Give me an example of what you mean by being intense right off the bat as the coach in high school.
I was very much so a person that I do not allow people to cut corners. Okay. I didn't do it as a captain in college, and I didn't do it as somebody, as a teacher or as a coach. So if I see you, let's say, cutting a lap in a warm up, I'm not just going to turn my head and say, hey, that's just what Johnny does. If I see you giving an 80% effort on a drill where I expect 100%, I'm not just going to say, that's what Jamie does. It's not that, that's just how they are. Just really detail driven, intensity driven when it's time. And then I just try to really push doing what needs to be done for success and never cutting corners, because that corner could be that little piece you needed to get to your ultimate goal.
So that's interesting what you just said right there, that, the drill that you cut, or the 80% effort versus 100% effort, could be the one thing the .02, if you will.
Yes.
That keeps you. So was that a personal thing for you of like, okay, did you feel like you cut any corners?
No,
I know you had
that's a
something
good
that set
question.
back. Yeah.
That's a good question. I think anyone that would tell you or talk to you about me would say that I was absolutely an overachiever in every single way in high school and in college. I've never cut a corner, a sit-up, a run, a drill in my life that I recall. And I would be very surprised if you could ever find a coach or a teammate that would say otherwise.
Okay.
And there was a high school kid once that I was coaching my first year that said, I was really trying to get him to do things right, and I was coaching him in the high jump. I coached every event my first year, like most of us at a
High
small
school
school.
Coach, yeah.
Yeah. Coaching this kid in high jump, and I'm literally jumping, in between his reps so that I can kind of feel what he goes through. And I end up jumping like 6'3", 6'4".
Jeez.
And I've never jumped in my life, but like once my sophomore year of high school where I was absolutely terrible. So I'm really starting to figure some things out, and I'm kind of excited for this kid because this kid's a sophomore in high school and he's jumping 6'4". And I'm like, this kid's got a future.
Yeah.
And I'm explaining things. I've got a lot of enthusiasm. He just looks me dead in the eyes, pupil to pupil, and says, "Coach, I'm sorry if I'm not gifted like you." And I almost punched the kid in the face.
Yeah,
and I didn't. But I was so mad because I felt like I had worked for every ounce I'd ever gotten.
Hey, this would be a much different interview if you had punched that kid. So thank you for not doing that. So it sounds like it's less about any kind of making up for the things that you did wrong, and more of, man, I know what it was like to be disappointed in not hitting my goal, and really it was because of something you had no control over, this sickness. So I want to make sure that you, athlete, don't have that same disappointment. It's not going to be because of me coaching you that you're going to miss your goals.
Yes, right. That's interesting you say that, because when they fail, I fail. And when I say that, I take it all to heart. I mean, if they don't run the time they need to, and if I allowed them to cut corners, or if I didn't have them do the right things, or if I allowed them to do the wrong things, I think I self-reflect and self-analyze a lot on what I could do better for them. Not always just what they could do better.
But within, and this is a question, but within the things that you have control over.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good. We'd have to have a whole coaching mentor session if you would have said no, because it's like you only control so many things.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So was that a theme? So that you're talking about right at the get-go in your very first high school coaching season, you coached for 14 of them. Did you have kind of that same drive on the 14th?
Well,
attention to detail that you did on number one, or did you develop in some ways?
I did. Well, number one, my first year I coached at a small school outside of Indianapolis called Monrovia High School.
Yeah.
I had 8 school records, or our kids had 8 school records.
Wow.
And I was really excited. I was excited about coming back the next season. And one by one over the school year, a kid would come by and be like, "Coach, I don't know if I'm going to run this year."
Oof.
I was like, "What are you talking about?" I had a 22-10, 22-11 long jumper, a 300 hurdler break the school record. The girl broke both the 100 and 300 school record. We had a girl run, I think 57.8 or something in the
wow,
in the 400. At a tiny school, that was a really big deal in Indiana. And when they started doing that, I'm just like, what are these kids talking about? Like, why would you quit something that's going so well? Well, and as that's happening, I got this guy who's, a Hall of Fame coach at Bloomington High School North saying, "Hey, why don't you come join me?" Because I lived in Bloomington. Why don't you come join me and coach on my staff? So as those kids kept saying that, I decided to teach at one school and drive to coach track at Bloomington High School North.
Oh, wow.
And I kept that drive as an assistant, and then I had a year where I ended up coaching at Columbus North High School, which is a whole nother story, because I got let go or riffed 3 years in a row teaching. It's a reduction in faculty. I didn't know if I was going to have my teaching job back the next year. So I was having to come up with a plan of, okay, if I don't get my job back, what am I going to do?
Right.
So I went there for a year, and then I came back, and I was head coach at Bloomington High School North. But I kept that same intensity and desire and passion, and I would say I still have it to this very day.
Mm-hmm. So you do this for 14 years at a few different schools.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing other things such as coaching at some clinics or at some camps and things like that. There's coaches right now that are listening that are college coaches their whole career, have never taught high school and coached high school. What are thinking about, don't get into the college side so much right now, but
Okay.
thinking about your 14 years of experience, what are some things that people just don't realize happen in the high school coaching side, struggles and things like that?
What? The first thing that people don't know about high school coaching that have never done it in their life is the time commitment. You're teaching all day. People forget you have kind of the 8 to 3 job, and then you have the practice, and then you have sometimes meets on during the week and on the weekends. So you got this huge time commitment. You've also got for me, I was really passionate about teaching and coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I had built up this really, after I was at Monrovia for 6 years teaching, I also got a job teaching at Bloomington High School North, where I was coaching track at the time. And I got a brand new program, which was a digital photography program. I'm trying to be a phenomenal teacher in that, which I did. We built a national caliber program, and I got kids going all over the country to schools with scholarships, won national awards. It's a very cool thing.
Wow.
So you're trying to do that piece and mentor and inspire and, lead your classroom per se.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're trying to build this championship team.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, by the way, I had specific goals for myself. I wanted to help one of these Bloomington North high school teams win a state title.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, when I say that, I was so invested into the school that I didn't care what team it was. So I coached high school track. I also coached football for 4 or 5 seasons, and I also coached some basketball there.
Oh, wow.
And I was in for a while. Towards the end of my stint, I did some speed and agility development with any program that wanted to be involved. So I just tried to do a lot of things to help make that happen. And there are some limitations, though, in high school coaching and some challenges that are different than college in this way. You don't totally control who you're working with in terms of how strong they are academically, whether or not their parents do or do not support them, or whether they're too involved, things like that. But one of the things I realized, man, is that I probably wasn't at a school that had the genetic capability of winning a state team title. And that was one of the hardest things for me to swallow, because that's what I wanted to do.
And you're talking about coaching high school in Indiana,
yes,
where there's one class.
One class, right.
Yeah, this isn't, I grew up, I went to high school in Alabama. When I was there, we had 6. And I think it's up to 7 now, which is ridiculous. Yes. There's more people in Indianapolis than there are in the whole state of Alabama. And you've got one class.
Everybody against everybody. That's right.
I love it that way too, by the way.
And I do too. And I played basketball that way, and I loved it. And I enjoyed coaching that way, but we're going against a fantastic coach like Tim Ritchie at Lawrence Central. We're going against Mike Davidson at Ben Davis High School, who's had, New Balance National 4x100 teams. And, we just couldn't do it.
Sure.
But at the same time, I felt myself changing lives and, just helping get people to where they wanted to get. So, I did some things that made me feel good. And I was telling you earlier about, I had this kid in my class who knew some of my visions. He knew my passion. He knew my expectations, and he really connected with me. And I did a lot of things in my class to inspire and motivate just human beings in general. So even though I was a track guy, everybody knew that, like, Coach Clark, he's he's going to make you work, but you're going to want to do a good job at anything. And that was always a big goal, to inspire people in whatever they wanted to pursue. But I had this kid in class named Max Irwin, who I connected with a lot. He worked really hard for me. In his senior year, he said, "Coach, after swimming's over, I'm going to come run for you." And I was like, well, "That's crazy, man. You've never run track before, have you?"
Right.
It's like, "No." And I said, "Well, that's great, man." Well, this is what I knew about the kid. He was a really good swimmer. Not just good, but really good. He was nationally ranked. He had some national medals. He had won multiple state championships in swimming. So, I was like, "All right, man, we'll do it. When you're done, let me know." So he finishes high school swimming, wins like 3 more state titles or whatever it was. He totaled, I think he ended with a total of 7.
And Indiana has a really strong high school swimming program.
Yep. And Bloomington North actually has one, probably, if I had to guess, they probably have about a top 10 program in the state of Indiana.
Wow.
So he did well there. He finishes his club season. He comes out and tries to run, and we agree that he's going to try the 800.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering, what event do you put a swimmer? Yeah.
Yeah, he tried the 800, and he did pretty well. I mean, his first one ever, I think the kid ended up running like, I want to say 207.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So and we had some kids during my time that were in 150, 152, a ton of 154 to 156 guys. So, in my eyes as the head coach at the time, I'm like, this guy's going to progress down, and watch by the end, he's going to do well. Well, let me tell you, we all know this, but, not everybody is, not only are they not built for running, but if you haven't done it and progressed it over time, like your body doesn't adapt well.
Right.
And he had major knee problems, and we both agreed that it wasn't worth sacrificing his college career and injury and all this. So he stepped away, and I totally, shook hands and said, "Man, I totally agree. You're doing the right thing. You're not quitting, by the way. We're making a choice that this is not the right thing for you." So moving forward, though, to the next year, at some point, he's got a little brother in high school. He brings a little folded up piece of paper to my classroom with a little box. And I'm like, "Hey, man, what's this?" And he's like, "This is for my brother." And I said, "Oh, okay,
because his brother's now in college.
His brother has graduated and went to Indiana University. He's now swimming in the Big Ten.
Oh, yeah, that's a great program. Yeah.
So, yeah, national caliber program. And I opened this little piece of paper. I started reading it, by the way, in my classroom.
All right.
And I can tell immediately that I got to leave my classroom.
Uh-oh.
Because I can already tell.
Up?
Yeah, it's a tearjerker, man.
Mm-hmm.
And he just says things like, "You're a huge inspiration to me. I just wish more teachers had your passion for people. You want to inspire us to do whatever we want to do, like whatever choice that is." And it's a front and back handwritten paper. So I'm in my office, I'm just reading this thing, and I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is incredible."
Yeah.
And, some tears flowing in a good way.
Yeah.
And I open the box, and it's a state championship ring.
From when he was swimming?
From when he swam his senior year. Like I said, I think the kid won 7 state championships. He knew what my goal was, to win state rings with my team, for my team and whatnot, because I was never able to do that as a high school kid. And this dude, wins a state title, orders his state ring, by the way, with my name engraved in it.
Oh, jeez.
So I'm looking at this ring, and, it's a swimming championship state ring, and it's got my name in it and stuff. And it was really powerful because I had a state ring, which was always one of the goals, but I didn't get it in the way that I thought I would get it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really magical and really special. And I wore it at a lot of meets for about 5 years in a row to remember how important my impact was on these people.
On people. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, people. That might be the greatest 207 half-miler state championship ring story ever. That is so cool. Honestly, to me, we're here interviewing you, Ernie, and obviously, again, the impact of people is the real meat of what you just said there, and that's amazing. Yep. But honestly, this story is on both sides. That kid to understand what you were pouring into him and how much you cared. And I mean, think about it. This kid was a 17, 18-year-old kid. We know enough 17,
Exactly.
18-year-old kids that he could be so aware of what was important to you and then be selfless enough. I don't care if he won 7 titles. A state championship ring ain't easy to come by. We all know
Right.
this.
I totally agree.
To give that and have the forth sight to give it to, he engraved it with your name. That is what, tell me that kid's like a CEO of some company or public servant
I'll tell you
somewhere.
what,
That kid has to
I
have done
did.
some great things.
He was a brilliant kid. He was really
Yeah.
intelligent. And I think that was one of the reasons I was so touched by it, is because just like what you're saying, I understood how old he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how we are at that age.
Mm-hmm.
We want to put our rings up on the shelf and, kind of, it's like, look what I did. Look how good I am.
It's about me. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that it was really touching and powerful. And I did follow him through his collegiate career, and we've been in touch a couple times, but I know he got his degree and did really well. He did extremely well in swimming. I think they won a Big Ten title as a team, which I remember was huge for him. That was one of the last collegiate times that we had talked, but yeah, pretty magical, man.
Yeah, no doubt that kid is doing something to affect other people's lives right now. And a lot of that has to do with people like you. He obviously had to have some other mentors and coaches on the swimming world and maybe his parents, but people like you poured into him as well, that could see the type of impact you can make on the world, regardless of what our external successes are, the rings and the paychecks and those kind of things, like affecting people's lives. That's a great story, man. I love that. We got to use the power of the internet and social media and find this guy now. He's not even a kid. I know this kid is doing some big things. I just know he is. There's no way.
I do too. Yeah. I guarantee you that he is.
So as you go through coaching high school, and obviously both sides are making impacts. You're making impact on young kids 14 to 18, and they're making impacts on your life, which is shaping
that's right.
you and molding you. When did the itch start thinking about, well, maybe I should or could coach college?
So for me, it was right after that. Because right after that, I had gotten, we had a team that placed 6th in the state. I had some state champs. I had built what I call the Elite Hurdle Club. I had started actually doing hurdle camps. Like, I had all this stuff going, and it was all going pretty well. And I've always taught this way, and I've always talked this way. If you're not passionate about it, find something that you're passionate about. You either got to find it back, or you got to find something else. And I was still very passionate about coaching and teaching. Well, let me rephrase. I started to lose my passion for teaching.
And you taught art this whole time, some kind of
this whole time.
Yeah. And so you're losing a little bit of passion of that, which has been a big deal for you since high school now.
Yeah, and part of it was that it was kind of the repeat, like kind of the same similar stuff, year after year after year. And I had done a good job of progressing. I got a master's degree from the Savannah College of Art and Design in 2010. So that was a big deal. That's a top 5 art school in the world. I did it all online, but it was extremely intense. High level professors, high level classmates. And I did that to become a better teacher in this digital photography program. And I progressed again from there. But, after a couple years, I just wasn't feeling what I had once as a teacher for that reason. But also, number 2, like, all of a sudden for administrators, they're getting this pressure about what grade is your school? What are exact attendance rates? And so that became a focus. What are our I-STEP scores? That's more important than
your test scores in like math and science, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we started to, as school systems, to veer away kids from things like a photography career, because that doesn't look as good to the school as sending kids to college. Number 1, number 2, sending them to a college for mathematics or to be a lawyer or to be to do whatever.
Right. The traditional
successful
medical
thing.
Yeah.
Right. What we traditionally perceive as successful. Now you got to remember, man, my dad's a mechanic. My dad's been a carpenter. He's worked I've worked grounds crews. My mom freaking, I remember when I was real little, she milked cows. She worked in factories, so like, I'm almost offended, man. When you tell me that success only means this, like, I get offended.
Well, I think we're certainly learning that lesson today,
right now,
when we talk about essential versus non-essential workers. Thank God there are stock boys and cash register people and gas attendant mechanics. That is what is keeping this world going right now, and everything else has stopped.
And I can tell you, everything you've just said, someone in my family does or has done.
Good.
So
thank goodness for them. Jeez.
So I started, I truly believe if a kid wants to frame houses and that's his passion, brother, go do that.
Absolutely.
Treat people the right way, work really hard at doing it, and you frame the most freaking amazing houses ever.
Hey, thank God.
I'm fine with it.
Thank God for that kid and his passions, because one, that's not my passion. I can't do that to save my life.
Correct.
And two, I don't get to be in my house right now if it's not for that kid. Same for you,
Yep.
Holy cow. Yeah. What a great perspective.
So anyway, when we started, I felt like we kind of were veering, like saying that every kid had to go to college and every kid had to go to kind of towards this money career path. I was starting to not like it. And then parents, by the way, were becoming more involved to the point where it was more about their opinion than the professional's opinion.
What year is this roughly?
Oh, you're looking at in the 2011, 12, 13 range.
Yep. Good.
And remember, I've been briefed now like 2 or 3 times.
Oh, right. Yep.
So, which got me interested in like looking kind of to the next place anyway. So not only had I looked at another school to coach at, but I started really thinking about the college thing. And pretty much I just kept getting like, well, you've done a good job. We actually know who you are, but you don't have any college coaching experience. And that's all I kept running into. You're great, but you have no college coaching experience.
Yeah, when we were talking earlier, when I was a college track coach, and I used to coach a lot of level 1 schools for USATF. And invariably the number one question coming from high school coaches was, how do I coach college? Now, some of those guys and gals were teachers at school systems like Naperville and Downers Grove, and I'm like, you are making way more money than you ever will coaching college, and they get to go home. You don't have to worry about recruiting, things like that. Like, you don't coach college. Stay where you are. You're doing a fantastic job. But we drive into this ego of, well, I coach college, I coach at Ashland, I coach at Indiana. But you're getting told, because obviously you have some contacts on the college side, you ran there and you probably sent kids to plenty of colleges. You're getting told kind of repeatedly of like, yeah, but you don't have any experience.
Right. And I started to travel. Like, I went down to Houston for the USTF CCCA convention, and of course learned from, all the big names that we all have. I went to Chicago and did the same thing. And then I started going to colleges. I went to Purdue. I had went to IU probably 30 times over a span of a few years, just to watch their practice and ask them questions. And by the way, I did that in every event, not just where my focus was, but in every event to learn. I went down to Kentucky and I saw a lady named Althea Thomas, who's now at Georgia. But she was coaching there at the time, and learned from her. And
she's awesome.
She's fantastic,
and has you may not know this. Some people who know Althea know this. Has a coaching family history. Her dad.
Yes, her dad.
Oh man, one of the greatest people. There was literally just an article the other day that University of Georgia did on her, and their head coach, who's amazing as well, Petros, had so many good things to say about her, and he's spot on. Althea is just not only an amazing coach, take a step back, she's an amazing person.
Incredible
so,
human being, right?
I'm
Yeah.
glad you got an experience with her. That's awesome.
Yes, and her and I still stay in touch.
Good.
Not a ton, but just a little, just enough to know where we are and what's going on. And
good.
We'd just spoken about the national meet and what she was hoping for and what I was hoping for, and of course all that got squashed. But as I went around, I kept realizing that I wasn't having moments where I was learning big things. I kept having confirmation that I knew I had enough knowledge to help a lot of people be really good. So it just raised my confidence to try to pursue that next level.
It was part of pursuing the next level. Not only there is some ego side to it. If you understand your ego, you understand that there is some ego to go into the college level, to coach in the college level. But was it also, and you talked about getting away from teaching, was there also some aspect of challenging yourself? Like, okay.
Here's what I remember. This is what I remember in particular. I ran with the Indiana Invaders Track Club after I graduated in Indianapolis.
I had forgotten all about those guys.
Yeah. Like, it wasn't like a really long thing, but a guy was there named John McAfee that ran at Baylor University.
Yeah.
He's a 44-point 4x4 split guy. He ran the 400 hurdles in 49.5-ish.
Yep.
Well, for some reason, man, he came to Indianapolis to train, and I literally did everything with him that summer. And, I would always fall back a little bit on training, especially in the speed stuff, but hurdle wise, I mean, he would just praise me. Man, unbelievable. You're about to take off, man. And I just remember sitting on the high jump mat with him, talking race strategy and talking drills. And the guy just praised me up and down for being able to use both legs really well and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But dude, when it came down to let's run these, 150s or just flat out 200s, this dude left me like I was, walking.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah, he was pretty good. And what I came to realize is, man, I just don't have the genetic component. Forget my work ethic, forget my determination. I don't have the genetic capacity to stay with this guy. Like, I'm done. So I ran a couple meets that summer, and I swallowed that. But I started to get an itch at this time to help people again do what I could not do, which is do things like run at the USA Championships, get to the Olympic trials, maybe even get to the Olympic Games someday. And I knew I could not do that as a high school coach. So that, I wouldn't call that ego. I would say, it's kind of like what you're saying. I was ready for that next step or that next challenge for myself.
So how did the Ashland opportunity come around? And was that even the first opportunity that occurred? But obviously it was the first one that succeeded. You went on to Ashland.
So I bet for about at least 3 years, if not even up to 5. I tried to, and I really mean this, weasel my way on the staff at IU, even as a volunteer, by the way. I didn't care.
Right.
I applied for jobs anywhere within the surrounding kind of 4 or 5 hours, and it really just wasn't going anywhere. Scott Fangman from UIndy knew that I was ready. I'd brought it up to him, 2 or 3 years in a row. And after the state meet, man, that final year that I ended up coaching, let's see, that was maybe 2013, 2014. I can't even remember what year right now. I think it was 2014. He literally saw me at the state meet and said, "Hey, man, we're going to meet and we're going to talk about your next opportunity because I think I'm ready. I know you're trying to get in, and I think I'm ready." So he ends up offering me a jumps position at the University of Indianapolis over the next month or so. So over the summer, I actually accept this job as a jump coach, but it's only going to pay like nickels and dimes.
Welcome to college coaching.
Yeah. So I'm still going to live in Bloomington. I still have to teach, but I can resign my high school coaching gig and I can drive there and start coaching college, and in my mind, that's going to kickstart it.
Right.
So, I accepted that job. I resigned from coaching at the high school level, and I was pretty excited, but I was kind of nervous because they already had a hurdle coach, by the way, and hurdling was, in my mind, kind of my thing.
Yeah, that's your passion for sure.
They had Giles Davis, who had tons of success there.
Yeah,
he was my sprint coach, who I really looked up to. Cool. I'd bounced ideas off him for years, by the way. So that's a mentor of mine. So I'm stepping in there. I can't do sprints. And by the way, I don't want to. I'm not trying to step on any toes or take anyone's job.
Right.
So you're the jumps guy. Well, I had coached, I've been coaching jumps for 14 years now at the high school level. I always coached long jump for my entire high school coaching career, and I coached high jump some. So I felt pretty comfortable in doing it. Well, as soon as we get into conditioning, man, a guy calls me by the name of Ed Bethea.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, as a high school guy, when a guy like Ed Bethea calls you, who's had some 51, 52 second, 400 girls, he's had some incredible 100 meter hurdle girls. He's had some 303, 304 men's 4x4s. He's been the head coach at Ohio State. Just got this whole resume. He calls me. You better believe I was pretty excited.
Absolutely.
And he's like, I just want to explore an opportunity with you. And he's brand new coach back at IU. He left Ohio State to come to IU. He was at IU prior to taking the Ohio State job.
Right.
So he's essentially coming back to work with Ron Helmers, who's still the head coach there. And he comes to Bloomington North to sit in my classroom and talk to me during an off period. And essentially, he's sitting there, and I feel like he's recruiting me.
You're right. That's what it sounds like, yeah.
to be a volunteer coach under him. And I wish I could paint this picture. I'm sitting in this high school classroom, and this guy walks in. He's got the Adidas IU hat on, the Adidas polo, the Adidas pants, Adidas shoes. And he's trying to talk me into working with him. Are you kidding me? If I'm going to work with you and Ron Helmer, who's a Hall of Fame guy, to work with Big Ten athletes, I'm already in.
Sign me up.
And his big thing was, I know you're not making very much at UIndy. I know you want to become a college coach. I'm not finding any negative about you. I need somebody that can come in and help me turn this program around, that can run a practice, not be their friend, have some knowledge. And I need you to do it the way that I want you to do it, not the way that you want you to do it. And I need to know if you're mature enough to do that. Easy for me. It's not even a question.
Right.
So I did it.
Wow. That's got to be a great experience. I've known Ed for a long time, and he definitely, you hit that nail on the head when you talk about doing it his way. He has a way that has been proven, by the way, year over year over year, to go in and be able to learn him and his system and how he coaches people.
And I'll tell you what, too, being a high school coach, and I don't care if it's high school or not, but being a high school head coach, knowing how I want things to be done, and having to fire some coaches, even if they're a volunteer, by the way, that wanted to veer off and do their own thing, whatever. That was a valuable experience. I had no intention of kind of doing it a different way. Sir, if this is how you want to do it, this is how we're going to do it. And I think I was a very good assistant to him in that regard. Just in that experience as a head high school coach helped them.
Yeah, for sure. So how many years did you work with Ed there?
So I worked with Ed for one full season. I was there for a year and a month. Actually, almost exactly. And learning about the recruiting process and learning from just really some good discussions with Ron Helmer about kind of his journey, by the way, because he used to be a high school coach before he was a college coach.
Oh, okay.
As well. So his information was valuable in that regard and in training. But I learned a lot from those guys. Mike Erb is a jumps coach there, phenomenal coach as well.
Great guy.
So getting Corey Martin, the throws coach. I mean, I just got all these little pieces that you can't even put a price on the experience and conversations that I had over the years with these guys. So anyway, set me up well, and I got offered this Ashland job, which is a full-time position. benefits, the
Yeah, first
office.
full-time gig.
Yeah, man, the control to do what you want to do. That's the transition that happened. And the you already know this, but the piece that people don't know is I took a 50% pay cut. Like I make half, to do this. But Ron Helmer was very influential in that regard, because he told me he had to do the same thing. And now he's a Big Ten head coach, and he has been for years. He said, if you really want to do this, you're going to have to do something like this. That's just how it goes.
Yeah.
And Brooks Johnson told me that years ago too. Brooks Johnson coached David Oliver and a ton of people before him.
We'd be here for an hour if we only listed the people that Brooks has worked with. Yeah.
But I remember him telling me, you're going to have to quit. And he said it with lots of cuss words mixed in. But he said,
good. You do know Brooks. Okay, good. Yeah.
He said, you're going to have to give that up, man. And you're going to have to commit. You're going to have to go learn from some people and get some experience and then work your way up. That's the only way. Anyway, those two guys made me realize what I had to do.
So, and the cool thing is, very lucky working your way up. You go to Ashland University, by the way. It's not like you went to a fledgling program. You went to an extremely successful program with a legendary Hall of Fame head coach in its own right, in Judd Logan. Yeah. So you've been there. This would have. This is. We're not going to have an outdoor season. This is your fifth season. Is that correct?
It's my fifth season. Yeah, man. So I just finished a group that have been here for 4 years, that were my recruits that signed with me. And
right.
So it's kind of a hard ending.
Yeah.
But this is what I have. Without another way of saying it, this is kind of what I have built in my time here with my own people that I've chosen.
So I'm doing air quotes here, high school coach, you go to Ashland University. I can't even name all the All-Americans and national, Pringle, to the kid you had. I can't remember his name. Your kid just got National Athlete of the Year, Runner of the Year.
Trevor Bassett.
Yeah, Trevor. Yeah, you've had some amazing success. What translated from what you learned coaching high school to coaching college?
So I talked about the whole leadership thing. The first thing I tried to do is be a good leader, and I'm gonna mention an old story.
Yeah, what's leadership mean to you? We talked about this a little bit. Yeah,
I think leadership is actually underrated a lot of times, and when I say that, I don't mean that people out here aren't being good leaders, but I think you got to model it, you got to speak it, you've got to try to uplift and inspire even when you don't feel like it. Let me just put it that way. So going all the way back to my high school days of when I was thinking about, coaching and being able to go to college and all this stuff, I ended up being, as a junior, on the JV basketball team, which really frustrated me, by the way.
And that was your first love, was basketball?
Yeah, it's my first love. And my best friend, by the way, is the MVP on the varsity team. And we play together all the time. And, one-on-ones, I can take this guy sometimes. And, I feel like I'm a pretty good player. But obviously, by the way, I'm not, because I'm splitting time between JV and varsity.
Right.
So, and one of the head coach said, one of the reasons is I need you to learn how to be a leader and be a scorer. Now, at the time, I didn't care what the reason was. I just wanted to know how I could be a varsity player. So I'm splitting time, and I'm with this little JV group that's mostly freshmen and sophomores, as you would expect.
Okay.
But the JV coach did a really good job of always pushing me to be a good leader. You got to motivate them. You got to pick them up when they're down, and just all this stuff. Now, it's kind of funny, like looking back, being able to score 22 points in a game, or, leading in rebounds and assists and points and stuff like that was, that was kind of cool looking back, but I didn't really see that at the time. I just saw it as me being on JV. But during that time, that coach really pushed me to lead this group. And in practice, he would always move me back and forth on teams. And I never really understood that until one day. One day he said, Clark, you're going to be with this group of guys, and here's the other group. it was pretty obvious. He had the very best 5 on one team. And then he had the very worst 4 plus me.
Right.
And he got, to the better group, he said, you guys are going to start tomorrow. We're going to go through some things right here. And we start going through it. And I just kept finding myself encouraging my guys and instructing and, just trying to be a good leader and kind of like a general of the court. And my guys, my group, kept kicking the snot out of the other group. We kept stopping them. We kept scoring. And the JV coach was getting really frustrated. And he finally just goes, you know what? Forget it. You guys, this group is starting tomorrow.
Wow.
You guys can't get it done. It was a kind of a switch for me because I kept seeing it on guys' faces where I was getting them to believe in themselves, to get through mistakes.
They were the least athletically talented.
Yep. They were the least experienced, least talented, least everything.
But because of leadership and someone taking charge and taking responsibility, they were actually able to give it to the quote unquote best 5 out there.
Yeah. And I'll never forget that because it was the first time in my life. You got to remember I'm 17 years old.
Right. Yeah.
It's the first time in my life where I realized my actions and my words in my kind of enthusiasm and my tone could drastically impact people. And it was a turning point in my life for leadership. So I tried to take that with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah. What did you take from that? Interestingly, it was at a 17-year-old level, not a 23 or when we are supposedly more mature and more experiences. What did you take from that you utilize in these past 5 years to create this success that you've had?
So going into this group, I noticed right away that some of their confidence was down. This group had gone through 2 coaches. I was their 3rd in 3 years. Some of them had actually gotten worse, not necessarily to their own fault, but because of changes in programs. So the first thing I had to do was teach. I really tried hard to teach them what we needed to do, always with a only focus on their progress. Don't worry about what's necessarily wrong in making you run slower than you want. But what's wrong and what can we fix to make it better? I always had enthusiasm to get better. It wasn't stressful. It was this is what's interesting to me. One of the guys said to me, the reason you made us so much better so quick is because you didn't that was your expectation. There was no other. There was no well, you're going to cut corners and stay down there, or you're not going to be able to make excuses. You expect us to come to work every day and get better. There's no other alternative. So I think I did that. And I think I just encouraged a lot. I don't think it was magic workouts. I think it was.
It usually isn't.
It usually isn't. That's what a lot of people want is the magic workouts. Right. But I think the fact that I was very technical and I could show them things on videos, I think that I learned how to teach things really well in big groups as a high school coach and as a teacher, as an educator. That helped me. And then, just this high level enthusiasm with high expectations and staying consistent with that, by the way. And that's one of the things I learned from Ed Bethea. My expectations are never going to lower for you. And that's something that I had with that first group. So my first year, Miles Pringle ran 46.03. Jeez. I had a guy that kind of ran 21.8 in the 200 a lot. He ended up running like 21.15 or 21.19. Wow. I had a really good 4x1 group that went to the national meet with 2 walk-ons, by the way, on that team.
Oh, wow.
So, things just started strong, but not great. But not everyone liked me, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Because not everyone wants to be held accountable.
I was about to say, my experience,
on a daily basis.
Yeah, my experience has been the good coaches, the good to great coaches, are not liked by everybody. Ed Bethia,
Yep.
who I would consider a friend and coached with him at some of the summer camps at Indiana, I think he would tell you he is not liked by everybody.
No, he's not.
But I tell you what, when
And he's okay with it.
Exactly. When a kid goes from 14 flat in the 100 hurdles to 13 flat,
Yes.
they like him a little better then.
Yeah, right. And I would say that about guys like myself and others. You either love us or you hate us. But usually the people that end up hating us are the people that won't stick with it, that don't want to be held accountable.
Yeah, people
that need
don't
some
want
excuses.
that.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I shouldn't say that. I said people don't want to be held accountable. That's actually not correct. People who want to be successful want to be held accountable. People who want to hide in the corners, do their own thing, which is not always the right things. That's the type of people who don't want accountability. If you look at the bulk of the kids that you've had out there that have done well, they're the ones who wanted that accountability of being at practice, being on time. What you mentioned earlier, call me out when I run 80% of an effort when you're expecting 100. That's the guys and gals that go on to be athletically and academically and socially successful out there. So are you much of a reader at all, Ernie?
I really like leadership type books.
Have you read, this made me think about this, and it actually is kind of a basketball story, so I thought maybe if you haven't read it you would enjoy this, and maybe some other people out there might enjoy it. Have you ever read a book called Lead for God's Sake?
I haven't.
Oh, as soon as this is over, well, you can't go to library, order it off of Amazon.
Yeah, I can order
it. Lead for God's Sake. The author's name is Todd Gonger. Todd actually spoke at the USTFCCCA convention a year or two ago. Now, it wasn't last year, so it was 2 years ago. It's a parable story of basketball. It's in Kentucky, which is, the rival of Indiana for high school basketball.
Right. Absolutely.
And talking about, purpose over passion over purpose.
Right.
And it's an amazing story. I got to meet Todd at the convention and did a little bit of an interview with him. I was going to interview him for a podcast. I got to get him on this podcast. But if you're a reader, you'll enjoy it because it's about leadership, and then also it's around your first love, basketball. But even if you're listening right now and you're not a basketball fan, if you believe leadership is important to your career, whether it's you're a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a husband, a wife, a father, a son, mother, this book, I can't plug it enough. It's just full of leadership, parable, and really down to earth, actionable items that you can put in to play with your family, your program, and your friends. So Lead for God's Sake by Todd Gonger. You gotta,
nice.
You absolutely have to go do it. And now knowing the author, Todd, met him, it just means even more to me. Because I'm with you. I believe leadership is a huge part of life that is not talked about a lot. We talk about who scores the most in basketball, who's the fastest on the track, who made a 4.0 and things like that. And we do discount because it's a little bit harder to define sometimes.
Correct.
But you know it when you see it. And guys like Ed and guys like you see that leadership.
Yeah, and it's not always that your MVP is your greatest leader.
That's right.
But it's easier to hand that award out.
Yeah, exactly.
And that happens a lot. And I even still remember I was voted my team captain my junior year of college, which was a big deal. Why? Because there's a bunch of seniors that didn't get voted. Right. And I took a lot of pride in that, and I tried to apply some of those same principles. I tried to be a good leader all the time, both with my words and my actions, by the way. In college, I didn't, I drank, I think, a couple times my freshman year, and I never did again because of the goals I had. I went from a guy who had a 2.8 GPA in high school to as high as a 3.7 in college, and made the dean's list twice. And I didn't miss classes. I didn't show up late. I could lead and never cut corners, but I did some of those things as a leader because I took it seriously. And that definitely, though, has carried over into my coaching career. And it's a lot easier, by the way, to lead and have those conversations if you're following that with your own
Oh,
actions.
right. Well, it may be
Yeah.
impossible if you're not the other side.
Yeah, but a lot of people try it, though.
Yeah.
A lot of people try to do that.
That's not leadership. That's a pig with lipstick, right? That's someone who says what you should do, but behind the lipstick, it's a pig, man. You ain't a leader. Yeah, I think that's pretty plain there. So let's let you give examples of your leadership. Let's talk to that high school coach right now that's listening. What recommendations, what would you suggest to someone who is coaching high school, whether that's their first year or 20th year, and they have a passion to coach on the collegiate level? What advice might you give them?
So this is the first thing I'm going to say. I'm actually going to criticize a little bit college coaches, and no one's allowed to take this personal, though, because you don't know it unless you coached high school for years. All right?
Interesting.
So, for any high school coach, one of the first things I would say is lead with enthusiasm and passion all the time, because kids follow that. And the younger they are, I think the more important that is, because as they get to college, sometimes they're not doing the team breakdowns. They have fragmented practices and they've got fragmented team meetings and all this stuff, where in high school, it's all together. Take advantage of that and create an enthusiastic culture. So that everybody knows this is actually, everybody looks at track as a individual sport, and I totally disagree. It's only individual if you make it individual. I like to look at it as a team sport, and do everything I can to create a bond between the team. Because if you start running and throwing and jumping for your team, all of a sudden it allows you to find levels that you couldn't find when you're only focused on you and your foul or your time. You just start performing for your team. So that's one thing. The next thing I would say is, obviously, get as much knowledge as you can, but you've got to be able to decipher and teach it in a way that any level can understand it, the top student as well as the lowest student. And you got to get really good at teaching that in groups. Some college coaches are fantastic about teaching one really intelligent kid with all sorts of terms and lingo in the high level track world, but they're not great at maybe teaching it to a kid that's not great at understanding and comprehending all the information and being able to control their body enough to put it to use. You got to be able, again, to do it for every level. The next is, can you do that for big groups? Because if I want to coach a good team, I need to have several good sprinters, several good hurdlers, several good of everything, right? So I see some college coaches struggle teaching larger groups or instructing larger groups without stopping practice for like 15 minutes to talk. You got to be able to do it fast and efficient, but do it well for everybody. So I think if high school coaches can get really good at those things, then when you try to transition into the collegiate world, you start to have an immediate upper hand on some of the other college coaches. And because you teach well, you're well-rounded with people, and you have a lot of knowledge from the books and from the videos and from high-level mentor coaches. And I think that's why I had a lot of high-level success immediate here, because I could speak to all levels and I could teach these big groups really quickly, really fast, really efficiently.
So you explained a lot of good attitudes for a high school coach to have who has aspirations to coach college, a lot of techniques as far as teaching in groups. What behaviors might you suggest as it relates to should a high school coach be going to the USFCA convention? Should they just call up every coach in there? You talked about you applied in a 4-hour kind of radius from Indianapolis. How do they even get into the conversation for a potential opening that might occur at a university?
So now that I've done it, I think it's more important to make the personal contacts. Send out the emails, show up at the convention, try to meet people and see what your kind of realistic opportunities are, because just applying, I think what you learn, and this is probably true in most jobs, but they're not going to look at every application. By the way, they may not even have the option to look at every application, because human resources or whoever might sift through before they even ever see them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you got to make those personal contacts and try to find out, you know, if you can come in as a paid position or part-time position, or is your only option a volunteer position. And I think for the most part, if you didn't GA out of college, you're probably going to have to go volunteer someplace that's going to allow you to volunteer.
Interesting, yeah. So what was the easiest part of the transition for you? And the follow-up question is going to be, what was the hardest thing for you? So start with the easiest. What did you get to college? Maybe you thought was going to be hard, but you're like, oh, okay, it's still hurdles. They're still 42 inches.
Yeah, and that was the easy part. Making workouts and actually coaching on the spot was the easiest freaking thing ever. And I thought it was going to be hard.
Yeah, okay.
And the reason I thought it was going to be hard is because they were going to be so good at everything.
Did you get a little surprised by that?
Yeah, and I also thought, and I had this a little bit more at Indiana University when I first started there, but not so much at Ashland. I thought that they were all going to be so confident and have high egos that they were going to struggle listening to me.
Okay, yeah.
and I had a little bit of that at Indiana University, but not a ton. At the end of the day, everybody wants to get better.
Right.
And if you can prove to them that you have some information to make them better, they're going to listen. And then if it works at all and it becomes valid, now they're in. And I really got that here at Ashland. So that part was probably 10 times easier than I expected.
That's awesome. Yeah, what you're describing there is a prima donna. And luckily,
right.
prima donnas are rare. If there was a whole team of prima donnas, they probably wouldn't even be a team at that point.
Yeah, right.
So that was the easiest, kind of a surprise for you, easy. That's awesome. That's a good thing to be awesome. What was the hardest? What did you either think was going to be easy and it was not, or came out of nowhere? You didn't even realize you were going to have to do XYZ when you got to become a collegiate coach?
So I don't even really know how to put this in words, so I'm just going to try to describe it. I've always tried to teach young people. I've always tried to treat young people like adults. So especially at the high school level, when I had juniors and seniors, I tried to teach them and advise them and mentor them like young adults. Because I always thought people treated them too much like they were 12 years old and 9 years old still. When I came to the collegiate level, I found myself struggling sometimes to realize I'm actually working with grown men and women. And that all I can do sometimes is just give them advice and let them go do what they do, because they're grown men and women. And I still have to be a mentor, and I still have to enforce some rules, and I still have to try to help them make good choices. But it's a lot different. As an example, for my fifth year senior, my first year that ran 21, 15 or whatever he ran, made the national meet for this first time of his life. I struggled with his personality at practice. Okay. Because I would say what we're going to do, and then he would sometimes say something under his breath or be like, man, this sucks. And I got so tired of it. And in high school, I would have nipped that in the butt, and it would have been gone. But this dude is, 24 years old.
Right.
That's a grown man.
Right.
So, and I remember pulling him in my office and telling him that whole story, by the way. And he looked me straight in the face. He's 6'4" grown man. And he said, Coach, have I ever not done anything you asked me to do in practice? And at that time, especially, I was stuck. I was like, Eric, no. He said, Coach, whether I like what you asked me to do or not, whether or not I even agree with it, whether or not I want to do it, I'm going to do it. And that was like a moment where I was like, people are who they are. And I can't be bothered so much by the fact that he does that sometimes that I can't appreciate the fact that he's doing everything I'm asking him to do. And so, and I would have nipped that in the butt as a 15, 16-year-old because it's not a good habit to be getting into. But as a fifth year senior, that was 3/4 of the way through his senior year, getting better and doing everything he needed to be doing. I needed to like just let that go. That's what he does.
I tell you, that young man showed some leadership and maturity there, because he spoke truth to power. He could have had a bad attitude and
He could have.
like, whatever, man, whatever.
Yes.
Instead he sounds like I'm gonna say he sat down. He said, well, let me explain to you who I am, in sense of, have I ever not done it?
Yes.
And helped you understand. That was a big moment for you too, to understand that. Yeah.
And it was, and he ended that, by the way, because I didn't freak out on him and he didn't freak out on me, right? We ended that conversation with him saying something to the effects of, and coach, I'll try to do better.
Wow. Wait, you mean two adults had a conversation where they had a disagreement about, I'm going to say, his attitude, even though his attitude was good in the sense that he did the workout. So his personality, maybe he needed to express that this sucks or whatever. So two adults had a conversation and had a disagreement about something, and yet were able to have a positive outcome. That's amazing. I wish more in our society could do that.
Yeah, and he was a guy too that just kept checking in with the program after he graduated.
That's awesome.
And comes back and says hi. So it was good. But it was a bit of an eye opener for me, that you're like, these people are who they are because of their age, and you're going to have input, and you should try to help them, but they are who they are. It's okay, man. Right. Chill out. So I think I've done a better job with that as I've realized their age.
And the ability to seek to understand, not to be understood, where that young man came from. You have you probably do, but
yes,
early when you first meet someone and coach them in their first seasons, not just their first season, where their background, what they came through, what they, how they were treated, how they treated others. You don't know that. It takes time to learn about someone, and you're dealing with 20, 30, 40, 50 kids. So the challenge of seeking to understand each on an individual level is not insurmountable, but boy, it's a big mountain to climb. Hey, Ernie, that is a great place to stop right there. That's so awesome. You have definitely connected some dots for people who are thinking about they're coaching high school and they want to coach college. Interesting. We didn't even talk about this, but I think you have also helped some college coaches understand what it's like to be on the high school level. There's some empathy there that they can understand now. Before we go, I want to understand a little bit better. You run a hurdles camp or clinic with a ton of hurdlers. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I've got something called the Elite Hurdle Camp that I started a long time ago, and I couldn't even tell you what year anymore, with a guy named Tim Ritchie, who runs the Indy pole vault camp in Indianapolis. I really wanted to start a hurdle camp because I wished I had that as a kid. No other reason. I wished I would have had that as a kid. So, he had this really good pole vault camp that I went to just to learn, and I spoke to him about it. He said, "You're in. Let's do this thing." So, and he said, "You're going to do all of it. I have nothing to do with it, but you're going to do it. You're going to, promo it. You're going to run it. You can pick coaches, whatever." So I did it, and I still remember to this day, I had 7 kids show up to my first hurdle camp. And I personally knew 5 of them and coached them either in high school or in club. And I was like, oh, gosh, I don't know if this is going to be worth it. Now, fast forward to the past couple summers, I've had between 180 and 200 hurdlers in from, anywhere from like 8 to 11 different states across the country. I've even had some interest, by the way, internationally. So that's grown into something really big. I always bring back. Go ahead.
200, nothing but hurdlers.
Nothing but
sounds like hurdle heaven.
Nothing but hurdlers. And for me as a coach, it is because it is what I did. It is part of my passion, and I like to help people.
So you must bring in other coaches that you trust, and a little bit like how Ed brought you in. By the way, it would probably be like you bring other coaches in to help with these kids.
Here's what I do. I bring in my own hurdlers. So, if you've hurdled for me at any point in your life, you know my cues, you know my drills.
Right.
So usually it's people within the last 2 or 3 years. Right. But I bring in, hire in, and depending on your kind of your experience doing the camps, like I pay people, some of them volunteer, but I have all my own people here at camp working it. So you might work with a Trevor Bassett who was pretty good in high school, but now is a national champion hurdler that ran in the USA championships. You may have a Max Tuttle who was a state champ for me in high school, that's now running 3 USA championships. These people may be working with you, and that's usually pretty cool for the high school kids.
Absolutely. Is this camp every summer?
I do one in the summer, and I've done more than one before, but usually it's a 2-day camp in the summer, and then I do a 2-day camp in the winter as well. So 2 different times a year, one to get yourself rolling in indoors, usually in December, right after Christmas, and then I always try to do it around July 4th, either the weekend right before, the weekend right after July 4th.
Well, let's hope that July 4th-ish 2020.
I know.
If someone out there is interested in learning more about sending their athletes to this camp, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? Whether it's email, Twitter, smoke signals, what is the best way?
Well, not smoke signals anymore. But I do have the EliteHurdleSpeed.com website.
EliteHurdleSpeed.com.
Yep, and that's going to get you typically information, contact info, dates, all that type of stuff. And usually, once it's up live, sometimes we have live online registration as well, and those types of things. But yeah, that'll give them everything they need.
Wow. Well, I encourage you, if you're listening to this, you can obviously hear the passion coming from Ernie. I was able to impress Coach Clark here because my first email address ever, back in the late 90s, so this is how old I might have had one of the first email addresses in the world, was through Hotmail. And so you had to come up with your name, and most people use their name or something, and my Hotmail address, which I don't even know if it's still around, I changed it to Gmail now, but was hurdlelove at hotmail.com. Now it's hurdlelove66 at gmail.com. So I was able to have some street cred with Coach Clark here. But I just encourage you to reach out to Ernie about hurdles or any other event. He's obviously doing an amazing job with all the events that he coaches. And Ernie, I just can't say thank you enough, man. You were so humble, so open. Really, my job here is to create as much value as I can for other coaches. And that's exactly what you just did here for the thousands. I mean, there are thousands of high school track coaches that are in the same boat you are as a college coach. Season is gone.
Right.
And again, I'm preaching to the choir because you taught and coached high school, but there are just so much passion and sadness right now because of not having a season. You just really created a lot of value for those guys and gals that are out there that really are the bedrock of our track and field market out there. They're the ones who are coaching kids that you're recruiting to coach.
Right.
And that's the bedrock for going on to USA teams and Olympics and stuff like that. So can't say thank you enough, man. This was so much fun.
Yep. Great for me too, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, again, you're not going to the track right now. So, you got a little baby, so your job's to go.
Yeah, I'm about to go back home. I'm in the office right now. I'm about to go back home.
I was going to say go paint a room or something, but you go take care of those babies. Give mommy a break. She deserves it.
That's right.
Thanks again so much, Ernie. Really appreciate you being with us today.
Well, I told you were going to enjoy that. I just found it so fascinating to hear his passion for leadership. I can't stress it enough. I mentioned the book, Lead for God's Sake by Todd Gonger. You absolutely, if you think leadership's important as a track and field coach, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this book it's for you. Just go out right now. Pause, go get it done. So thanks for Ernie. Really hope you enjoyed connecting with Ernie as much as I did, because it just made my day. And if you've made it this far, boy, thank you so much. Your time means the world to me. This was another long one here, an hour and a half talk. And again, felt like 5 minutes. Ernie is such a pleasure to talk to. If you would like to know about future episodes of the Gila Athletics Connections podcast, highly suggest you hit the subscribe button in your podcast player. That way you'll know when we publish an episode and who that person is and background and why you should be listening. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Gila Athletics Connections podcast, email me at hurdle@gilathletics.com. That's right. Much like Ernie, I'm a hurdle guy. hurdle@gilathletics.com. In the meantime, certainly hope you feel led to share this podcast on your social media network of choice. Word of mouth is the way to gain more value for other people with this podcast. And super look forward to you joining us next time when we once again connect you with another great track and field coach. Bye.